Discover the amazing truth behind the Trojan War, 10 transformative lessons revealed. Clara stared at the flickering fluorescent lights above her, a reflection of the chaotic thoughts swirling in her mind. The dingy classroom walls seemed to close in on her, trapping her under the weight of another unrecognized effort. Why was she still here in this place that felt more like a cage than a sanctuary? With every passing year, it became harder to dismiss the feelings of neglect, particularly as colleagues basked in the accolades she craved. Teaching historical events felt like pouring her soul into a leaky bucket, an incessant noise drowned out by the clamor for test scores and rigid curriculums. Frustration clawed at her insides that it wasn't that she didn't love history, it was the relentless cycle of being overlooked. In her mind, she contrasted her unfulfilled aspirations with the glory of historical figures who had taken bold stands. Was her passion merely a whisper, drowned out by the tumult of an indifferent education system? She rubbed her temples, fighting back the anxiety that accompanied these thoughts. She was tired of being invisible, tired of the relentless judgment of those who determined her worth by numbers alone. As she dug through boxes in her late grandfather's attic one rainy afternoon, her fingers brushed the leather of a dusty book. It beckoned her like a lighthouse amidst stormy seas. Curiosity ignited, and once opened, Clara was swept into the layered tales of the Trojan War, a tapestry of betrayal, ambition, and fierce loyalty that resonated far beyond the bounds of the ancient world. These stories offered her a raw insight into human emotions. Their struggles echoed her own. Her heart raced, not just from connection but with an inkling of what could be. What if history wasn't just a series of events? What if it were lessons on resilience? The thought spiraled in her mind, taking root. She envisioned herself presenting these narratives to her students, inviting them to draw parallels between the ancient and the modern. Perhaps she'd ignite something within them that wouldn't fade away when the tests passed. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue, but doubt crept back in. What would the administration think of her unorthodox methods? The fear of conflict imprinted on her chest, and she imagined the principal's furrowed brow as complaints filtered in from colleagues skeptical of her approach. Clara hesitated, torn between the familiarity of her outdated curriculum that offered safety and the tantalizing promise of meaningful engagement. Would anyone even care? Uncertainty clawed at her, a desperate whisper mixing with the terror that her risk could end her teaching career. With her mind racing and breaths irregular, Clara stood before her class the next day, ready to share this new vision. But even as she spoke, the question loomed: would this be enough to ignite the kind of passion she had always yearned for, or would it erode into silence, blending into the haze of forgotten histories? She could sense a pivotal shift in the very air around her, one that pulled tight with potential. But as the first few hands shot up, eager to engage, a chilling thought struck her: if she stepped too far, would anyone be left to stand with her, or would she fall yet again into obscurity? A subtle buoyancy filled the atmosphere as Clara surveyed her classroom. For the first time in years, it felt as though her students were leaning in, each eager face a reflection of her own resolve, their curiosity ignited by the stories she shared. Her voice carried the thunderous tales of the Trojan War, weaving together moments of betrayal with glimpses of unyielding loyalty. As her words unfolded, she sensed the shift tightening around her, shifting from suffocating expectations to the spark of genuine engagement. "Class, what would you do if you were faced with a choice between ambition and loyalty?" she posed, gauging their reactions. A chorus of stammered thoughts erupted, igniting a mental tug-of-war among the students. Their responses varied, yet the fundamental question hung palpably in the air: was the pursuit of greatness worth the cost of those they cared for? Clara felt a rush of adrenaline surge through her. Here, within these walls, she had created a moment of profound inquiry that felt right. Yet, as she moved from face to face, her heart raced with the fear of overextending her newfound boldness. Would this be the lesson that unraveled her? Her inner turmoil, once restrained, simmered within her a cocktail of risk and hope. Days passed and the initial spark continued to flicker, yet anxiety coiled tighter around her heart. With every passing lesson, students were revealing their own narratives, dreams, fears, and challenges they faced daily. These stories aligned with the ancient lessons she brought to life, igniting not only academic curiosity but a sense of shared humanity. Clara began assigning projects that encouraged personal reflections and family histories, deliberately inviting comparisons with the epic tales from her history lessons, yet, with success came scrutiny. Whispers circulated among her colleagues, echoed by dismissive comments around the teacher's lounge. Clara overheard fragments of conversations concerning her non-traditional approach as if the very act of fostering emotional connections through history was something to be ridiculed. Each barbed word dug into her, leaving trails of doubt that stung like open wounds, but she steeled herself against the naysayers. Clara began keeping a journal, jotting down reflections on the struggles she faced both at work and within her mind. She documented her fears of judgment juxtaposed with the revelations from her students. This therapeutic practice became a lifeline, capturing raw emotions, moments when students left class energized, when her heart felt light amidst the usual heaviness of expectation. One cold afternoon, she received a note from a shy student, Lucy, who wrestled with her struggles at home. Clara read, "Your lessons help me, it's like you know me." Those 6 words resonated deeply, planting seeds of resilience deep within Clara's heart. Yet, she found herself questioning whether she was driving real transformation, or merely echoing a fleeting moment of connection. One afternoon after class, she faced Krista, her supervisor. The older woman's gaze bore into her a mix of concern and disappointment. "Clara, you know the curriculum doesn't allow for personal narratives. We focus on the facts, not feelings," she stated firmly. A knot formed in Clara's stomach, fear tightening its grip again as every reason to revert to the conventional method of teaching glided through her mind. But deep within, another voice cried out for authenticity. The moment was hers to seize. Did she want to be a faceless instructor or a catalyst for change? "I believe history is more than facts, Krista. It's the emotions intertwining these experiences that shape our humanity." Clara's voice wavered but grew stronger. "What if we could inspire students to not only learn history but to live by it?" As Clara stood, firm in her conviction, she felt empowered not just by her words but by her choice for her future. It was a bold stance, one that threatened the sanctity of her career but promised the spark of genuine connection. Would she have the courage to fully embrace this path, despite the wisdom of her mentors urging her to toe the line? The question loomed, heavier now: would her determination rise or break under pressure? In that moment, the echoes of ancient struggles became more than stories, they became her own. The following week, Clara faced the scrutiny of the school's faculty with a renewed sense of purpose. She was aware that her unorthodox teaching methods had stirred discontent among her peers, yet the excitement from her classroom still pulsed vividly in her memory. Each day, students entered with a spark, a glimmer of hope for something beyond rote memorization. She was determined to nurture that energy. During lunch, Clara sat alone in the corner of the teacher's lounge, her journal open, pen gliding across the page as she documented the realm of conflicting emotions, pride swelling in her from Lucy's note, tempered by uncertainty regarding the future of her teaching career. She heard snippets of conversation from nearby faculty, their laughter punctuated with remarks about her experimental curriculum. The words felt like arrows aiming for her integrity, and yet, she fought back the urge to hide. After lunch, Clara decided to lead a discussion on trust, using the relationship between Agamemnon and Achilles in the Trojan War as a backdrop. As the bell rang and students filed into the room, Clara felt the weight of doubts fluttering in her stomach. But she remembered the eager faces of her students, willing to share their own stories interwoven with the fabric of history. Clara took a deep breath, grounding herself in the belief that she was making a difference. "Class, today we'll explore trust and betrayal. Why do you think Achilles felt justified in his actions? Was he right to withdraw from battle?" As the students shared their thoughts and responses, Clara noted a tangible shift in engagement. They dove into complex questions about loyalty, power, and human vulnerability, realizing that these ancient struggles mirrored their own lives in poignant, relatable ways. However, as she navigated deeper themes, Clara felt the eyes of her supervisor, Krista, boring into her from the doorway. Clara's resolve wavered momentarily. What if she was leading her students astray? But as Lucy, her quietest student, raised her hand and shared a raw, personal story of feeling alienated from her peers, a small light illuminated the room. Clara nodded, encouraging more students to share their experiences, igniting an open dialogue that felt transformative. Days morphed into weeks, each lesson a new venture into personal connection through the lens of history. Clara began experimenting with creative projects. Students wrote letters as historical figures to reveal their innermost thoughts. The ancient became modern, and the classroom pulsated with an emotional heartbeat. Yet, with every success, Clara's anxiety crescendos, the faculty's grumbling intensified. A formal meeting was scheduled to discuss her methods, and the weight of impending criticism loomed larger. As the day approached, Clara fought the urge to buckle under pressure. Instead, she poured her energy into a final project timed with the imminent presentation, challenging students to defend their emotional interpretations of historical events. It reflected not only their understanding of history but also their identities. Standing in front of her students on presentation day, Clara felt the culmination of all her efforts. Each student's voice, once hesitant, now resonated with conviction as they framed their arguments, melding their personal experiences with significant historical lessons. Clara's heart swelled with pride. They were speaking not only of history but of their realities, weaving connections that transcended mere dates and events. As she prepared to send the students off with a simple affirmation, Clara locked eyes with Krista, who stood at the back of the room. A flicker of intrigue played across her face, but Clara could still feel the disapproval simmering beneath the surface. After class, Clara began to reflect on how to articulate her educational philosophy, feeling the pressure mount around her. It was one thing to inspire her students, but would the school district recognize the value of her approach? In that moment of internal conflict, Clara realized a pivotal choice lay ahead. Would she continue down the path of authenticity, challenging the norms and facing potential backlash, or retreat to the safety of conventional teaching? The stakes were high, and her next decision would dictate not just her career, but the kind of educator she wanted to become. The thought anchored itself deep within her as she prepared to confront the faculty. Would her voice resonate, or would it fall silent among the clamor for conformity? Clara took a deep breath as she entered the conference room for the meeting with the faculty, a space that felt heavy with expectation and judgment. The long table, flanked by her colleagues, loomed ahead like a barrier, and she could sense the underlying tension in the air, an electrifying charge that both frightened and thrilled her. She had spent the previous night rehearsing her points, her heart racing with the prospect of defending her methods. Each time she practiced, doubts crept in. Had she truly been effective in teaching her students? Had she pushed them too far outside their comfort zones? But as she recalled the belligerent spark in Lucy's eyes during their last class discussion, she fortified her resolve. This was about more than just her career. It was about doing what she believed in, advocating for her students, and embracing the very essence of education. The meeting commenced, and Mrs. Green, the chair of the faculty, began with a formal overview of what would be discussed. Her tone was neutral, but Clara could detect the underlying skepticism. The others around the table shared furtive glances, some whispering among themselves, and the discomfort was palpable. Clara felt her palms dampen against the cold surface of the table. "Clara," Mrs. Green's voice sliced through the noise, "let us start with your recent project on emotional interpretations of historical events. Can you explain what led you to adopt such unconventional methodologies?" This was her moment to address not only her colleagues' concerns, but also her own. Clara clenched her fists beneath the table, gathering courage. "Absolutely. I wanted my students to engage with history on a personal level, to go beyond mere memorization. Understanding our past influences who we are today," Clara asserted, feeling the adrenaline surge as the words left her mouth. Silence filled the room. Clara didn't know if what she said resonated with them or if they were simply processing the very idea. But she pressed on, weaving her thoughts into a narrative that illustrated her vision. The stories of Agamemnon and Achilles aren't just tales from thousands of years ago, they reflect timeless human experiences. In class, we explored issues like trust and betrayal in ways that felt personal. I want students to draw parallels to their lives, to see that they have agency, she explained, her voice growing more confident with every phrase. As she talked, she noticed some faculty members shifting slightly in their seats. Clara felt an inkling of hope, perhaps this truly mattered to them. Then, she caught Krista's gaze. The supervisor's expression remained unreadable, but Clara sensed a mix of curiosity and contemplation. The questions came in waves, some challenges and others supportive, as the meeting unfolded. A fellow teacher, Mr. Jensen, expressed concern over her unorthodox assessments, prompting a familiar discomfort in Clara. What about standardized testing frameworks? They require students to respond conventionally, to adhere to structures that your methods disrupt, he said, his tone level but firm. Clara hesitated, her thoughts skimming the edge of panic. I understand the importance of preparing students for tests, but isn't it equally vital for them to think critically? To process information deeply? The words tumbled out before she could fully calibrate their weight. As the discussion continued, Clara felt increasingly aware of the dichotomy growing within her, an inner chasm between tradition and innovation, between the fears of the faculty and the dreams she held for her students. Hours later, as the meeting adjourned, Clara walked away with an odd blend of elation and anxiety. She wasn't sure if she had swayed any minds, but she had stood her ground. She had voiced a powerful truth, one that both terrified and exhilarated her. In the days that followed, Clara found herself caught in a cycle of reflection. Was her response sufficient? Was the battle she waged worth the toll it would take if she didn't gain the faculty's support? The uncertainty gnawed at her, but then she recalled the spark in Lucy's eyes, the passion in her students when discussing the weight of history. Surely, that was a testament to the worth of her path. Yet, the meetings were looming closer, and she could feel the weight of impending judgment intensifying. As she returned home one evening, Clara received an unexpected message. It was from Krista, asking to meet privately. What could this mean? The time had come to face the possibility that could reshape her career forever. Would this be a chance to solidify her vision, or the moment everything crumbled around her? Clara spent the next day consumed by an unease that twisted in her gut. Her usual pre-class preparation felt superficial, her mind racing back to Krista's message, running through scenarios that ranged from encouraging to unnerving. What could possibly be on the table? As she sat in her classroom, staring at the collection of students engaged in animated discussions about Odysseus's cunning, she noticed how much her approach had ignited their participation. Each insight they shared resonated with her, reminding Clara why she had ventured down this pedagogical path. But beneath her enthusiasm lurked a shadow of fear. Would Krista crush that spark the moment they met? When the time finally arrived, Clara found herself in front of Krista's office door, heart hammering against her ribs. She took a deep breath, straightening her blouse before pushing it open. Krista looked up from her desk, her expression unreadable. Thank you for meeting with me, Clara, she began, gesturing to the chair opposite her. Clara sat, her hands fidgeting in her lap. I wanted to discuss your recent project, Krista continued. I've been looking over the student feedback, and while it's clear your methods are creating engagement, not everyone agrees with your approach. Some faculty feel your style seems to undermine the curriculum standards. A knot formed in Clara's stomach. I understand that perspective, but I believe engagement is the foundation of learning. Isn't it worth the risk to inspire critical thought? Her voice gained strength, fueled by memories of her students. Krista regarded her for a moment, contemplative. That's precisely why I wanted to meet. Your passion is evident, but we have protocols to adhere to. It's not solely about inspiring students, we need tangible results to show the administration. They're considering the possibility of restructuring our teaching methods, and I need your input. You could be a leading voice in this. Clara blinked, absorbing the weight of Krista's words. This was more than an opportunity, it was a chance to influence not just her future, but potentially the futures of many students. The responsibility was daunting, but quietly igniting within was a surge of ambition. "I would love to be part of that conversation," she said, the certainty in her tone both new and familiar. "You need to be prepared, then," Krista warned, her expression now sharp. "Some aren't going to welcome these ideas. You'll need to back your arguments with research, data, student successes, anything to provide leverage. You'll be stepping into a critical role." As their discussion progressed, Clara began to visualize her path not just as a teacher, but as a changemaker. She realized her vision could serve as a blueprint for others. The mixture of fear and exhilaration wasn't just about confrontation, it was a chance for her to transform the dialogue around education. But with ambition came questions. Would she have the strength to counter the doubts of not just her peers but also entrenched institutional norms? How deeply would she have to confront herself to champion this vision? When the meeting concluded, Clara left with her heart pounding but a flicker of determination sparking in her chest. She finally understood that this path would not only lead her to become an advocate for her students, it would necessitate confronting her own insecurities and doubt. As she sat at her desk later that evening, ideas swirling in her mind, she began drafting a plan. She felt the familiar thrill of inspiration returning as she mapped out how to pull together data and past student outcomes. Suddenly, her phone buzzed an email notification from the faculty. The subject line read, "Upcoming faculty meeting, curriculum changes." The moment of conflict hung overhead like a storm cloud, heavy and electric. What would she say when the time came to present her ideas? Would she be ready to face not only her colleagues but also the ghosts of uncertainty that lingered because of her unorthodox methods? Clara understood now that the time for hesitation had passed. She was at a crucial turning point in her career, one that would forge her into the educator she aspired to be or push her back into compliance. The decision would be hers alone to navigate, the very essence of her professional development hanging in the balance. As tension mounted within her, Clara could sense the imminent clash ahead, a clash that would demand every ounce of her resolve. The moment was approaching when she would either rise or falter. With her heart racing and her mind spinning with possibilities, she steeled herself against the uncertainty. The transformation she envisioned wouldn't come without struggle, but she was ready to seize it. She glanced at the meeting reminder again and whispered under her breath, "This is just the beginning." Clara spent the next few days submerged in research. Books piled high on her desk, notes scattered like breadcrumbs leading to insights, she pored over various teaching methodologies, comparing data, and compiling student testimonials that highlighted the successes of her innovative strategies. Despite the pressure building within her, her resolve crystallized with each piece of evidence she found. As the faculty meeting approached, Clara became consumed by an urge not just to present, but to persuade. She crafted her arguments carefully, ensuring her logic was airtight, armed with statistics and personal anecdotes that illustrated her impact. But amid the growing confidence was an ever-present whisper of self-doubt. What if her colleagues scrutinized her methods relentlessly? What if her enthusiasm was dismissed as immaturity or recklessness? On the morning of the meeting, Clara arrived early. The stillness of the empty faculty room offered a momentary peace before the storm. She took several deep breaths, focusing on the purpose of her conviction. This wasn't merely about her teaching style, it was about advocating for a more engaging and effective educational experience for all students. With each inhalation, she envisioned how compelling her presentation could be, bolstering her clarity of purpose. As faculty members trickled in, she noticed their varied expressions, some aloof, others questioning, and a few even curious. Clara felt an instinctive tug of vulnerability, nostalgic for the familiar walls of her classroom where students' faces lit up with curiosity rather than skepticism. When it was finally her turn to speak, Clara stood before the assembly armed with her data and determination. She took a brief moment to scan the room, committing to memory the expressions of her peers, and began. "Thank you all for your time today," she started, her voice steady despite the charged atmosphere. "I want to discuss ways we can enhance student engagement while ensuring we adhere to the curriculum standards." She made her points clear, citing statistics, and sharing stories of students who thrived in her classroom environment. The more Clara spoke, the more she began to feel the impact of her words emanating throughout the room, but as anticipated, resistance soon surfaced. A senior faculty member interrupted, her tone curt. "Clara, it's easy to romanticize engagement, but how do we measure its effectiveness against standardized outcomes? What if your methods lead to lower test scores?" Clara's heart sank, her carefully constructed argument suddenly hanging in the air like a fragile thread. In that moment, the clash she had anticipated materialized with relentless intensity. "While standardized tests are important," Clara replied, her voice firm despite the tremors of her pulse, "they do not encapsulate the full spectrum of learning. Engagement fosters critical thinking, which is an invaluable skill that transcends test scores. I'm not suggesting we abandon standards, I'm proposing we adapt our methods to encourage a deeper understanding." The room buzzed with murmurs, some faculty nodding, others frowning in dissent. Clara felt her stomach knot, but she wouldn't back down. This was her moment of truth, a challenge to the fear she had carried into the room. As the discussion progressed, Clara sensed the building tension transform into a palpable energy. With each point made and rebuttal encountered, she found clarity within her argument. Perhaps this was the essence of her professional journey, the convergence of commitment and courage, shaped by not only her experiences but also her willingness to confront the rigid structures before her. When the meeting closed, there were no immediate conclusions, but Clara felt a flicker of triumph. She had navigated through conflict, voiced her vision, and defended her beliefs. The real transformation, however, felt internal. She had unearthed aspects of her professional identity that had long been dormant, both as an educator and as a leader. Leaving the meeting, Clara drowned in thoughts of what would come next. She couldn't ignore the mixed feedback, nor the lingering uncertainty about her role in shaping institutional methodologies. The path ahead was still clouded, but she was brimming with resolve, the kind that could only come from true confrontation. As she walked down the hallway, Clara's mind raced ahead to her next steps. Was it time to rally others around her vision, or did she need to refine her approach before moving forward? With newfound tenacity, she vowed the next time she would stand before her colleagues, she would not just advocate but inspire them to see the incredible potential within their students. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from Krista. "Let us meet to discuss the feedback from today. I think you made a solid impression regardless of dissent." A shiver of anticipation rippled through her. This was not the end, it was a threshold to deeper challenges, negotiations, revelations, and perhaps an even greater professional evolution. Clara tightened her grip on the phone, whispering to herself, "Now I have to prepare for the real battle." Clara felt a buzz of energy reverberate through her as she stepped into the cafe, eyes scanning for Krista. The air was dense with the scent of coffee and pastries, a welcome distraction from the whirlwind of thoughts swirling within her. She was aware that every encounter with Krista had implications, each moment a chance to shape her future trajectory. Today felt pivotal. As she settled into a corner table, Clara mentally practiced the points she wanted to discuss. Krista was a seasoned educator, familiar with the labyrinth of institutional politics Clara was beginning to navigate. With her guidance, Clara hoped to distill the feedback from the meeting into actionable insights. "Hey, Clara." Krista's voice broke her concentration, her friendly demeanor a reassuring balm. Clara smiled, gesturing for her to sit. "How are you feeling after the meeting?" Krista asked, her brows lifting with evident curiosity. Clara hesitated a moment, gathering her thoughts before responding. "I feel like I made my case, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I need more support. Everyone has a vested interest in the status quo." "I get that. Change can feel like a threat," Krista replied knowingly, leaning back in her chair. "But that's why the conversation is so crucial now. You've planted a seed. The question is, how do you nurture it?" Clara felt a rush of determination wash over her at this notion. Nurturing was perhaps the missing element in her strategy. "What if I host a workshop? Something that presents my methods, inviting faculty to participate and discuss their hesitations openly. I want them to engage, and to feel ownership of the changes. Krista's expression shifted, approval evident. That could be a great way to show rather than tell. Engaging them in the process lets them see the value firsthand. Just be prepared, some may resist the change more than others. Clara nodded, the reality of resistance hardening her resolve. I know that. But if I can create an environment where they can experience the benefits in real time, it might shift perspectives. It underscores the importance of engagement rather than just citing statistics. Exactly, Krista encouraged, her enthusiasm infectious. But be mindful of the emotional component, too. People are often more resistant to change not because of the facts, but due to fear of the unknown. The nuances of that concept sank into Clara's thoughts like stones in a pond, rippling outward as she considered the deeper implications. Was her goal strictly professional, or did it also hold roots in personal dynamics? She couldn't deny that she was harboring her own fears, deeply embedded and often irrational, concerning how her colleagues viewed her ambitions. What do I do if they push back hard? Clara asked, suddenly wary of her plans. Stick with your vision, but be open to dialogue. Don't dismiss their reservations outright. The challenge lies in finding a common ground. Frame your vision with room for collaboration and co-creation of solutions, Krista replied, her tone reassuring yet firm. Inspiration lies not just in conviction but in empathy. A flood of ideas rushed through Clara. Krista's words began to weave into a detailed plan outlining the workshop, integrating collaborative exercises, and even inviting faculty members to share their own experiences related to engagement. Each moment they spent in discussion, and each anecdote shared, might serve to diminish that fear and resistance. By the time they parted ways, Clara's mind was a cacophony of thoughts, interspersed with newfound clarity. She hadn't just set the stage for her vision but had recognized layers of her own motivations. As she walked back to her office, Clara couldn't help but reflect on Krista's insights. On the one hand, the fear of confrontation loomed like a shadow, while on the other lay the potential for growth, not only for her colleagues but for herself as well. Arriving at her desk, she sat in silence for a moment, contemplating the workshop she intended to craft. The excitement bubbled within her, and yet the specter of what lay beneath anxiety tethered to acceptance still flickered at the edges. She opened her laptop, fingers poised at the keyboard. What was she truly attempting to achieve? Empowerment in education or affirmation from her peers? Clara took a deep breath, grounding herself in the moment. The lines of her purpose were blurring, but she felt that the real breakthrough would require wrestling with those fears head-on. With every word she typed, the realization thudded in her chest. Her next challenge would not merely be in presenting her methodologies but in confronting the emotional landscape of her colleagues. She would find a way to inspire them to take risks alongside her beyond fear into possibility. The stakes had risen, and while she had aspirations to empower others, she knew deep down, it would begin with her most profound internal conflict. Would she be able to face her own uncertainties as fiercely as she intended to address theirs? As the screen lit up with her emerging presentation, an urgent question echoed in her mind: how many walls would she need to break through to embrace this transformation fully? Clara took a moment to reflect after typing the agenda for her workshop. She grappled with the weight of her ambitions and the gnawing insecurities that still clung to her. What if the faculty dismissed her efforts? In her heart, she understood that real empowerment couldn't happen in solitude, it demanded a community of engagement. She needed to shift from self-doubt to collaborative courage. After taking a view off the window filled with setting sun, Clara returned her focus to her laptop, determined to outline the workshop's core objectives. She envisioned creating a space not only for her methodologies but for stories, lived experiences from her colleagues that could bridge gaps of understanding. Can I open the floor for vulnerabilities? Clara thought, a surge of anxiety racing through her veins. What if sharing personal experience led to conflict instead of collaboration? It was an all too familiar line she had walked, balancing ambition with the specter of fear. Her fingers danced over the keyboard as she fleshed out the agenda. She included a segment for breakout discussions where participants could collaborate and refine each other's thoughts. The more she developed it, the more she felt a weight lifting. Perhaps, she could guide them not only to understanding her methods but also to confront their own uncertainties. As the workshop draft took shape, Clara began to envision who would most benefit from her invitation. She thought of Luca, whose gruff disposition often masked a heart that beat for grounded, practical solutions. Then there was Emma, an easy laugh but often reticent when it came to deep conversations. By including a diverse group, Clara aimed to cultivate dialogue, a tapestry of perspectives that would enrich the experience for everyone. However, the excitement yielded to a familiar pit in her stomach as she considered the faculty's established dynamics, the cliques and the unspoken hierarchies. Would they view her invitation as a breach of protocol? Experience had taught her that stepping outside the existing framework often ruffled feathers. No matter how well-intentioned her aspirations, with each passing moment, she fought to continue reframing her mindset. If she could center the conversation on the value of shared experiences rather than her methods, it might diminish resistance. The notion resonated within her, causing a swell of hope. Empowerment could come first from vulnerability, she thought, but whom would she approach first? Clara threw back her shoulders, committed to developing relations with all involved, yet aware she would only be able to find traction if she forged connections with those who were skeptical. They would be the hardest to convince, but she needed their voices in the room to foster real change. That evening, Clara worked late into the night, drafting emails that felt more like heartfelt invitations than requests. Each word was meticulously crafted, consciously avoiding any tone of authority or condescension. This was not a directive but rather a collaborative journey she wished to embark upon together. As she hit send on her last email, an image flashed in her mind of herself, standing in front of a skeptical crowd, presenting. Would she have the courage to face potential criticism? Moments spent in reflection revealed more than she had anticipated. The conflict bubbled not just in her workshops but within, unearthing deeper aspects of her character that had long remained dormant. Even as fatigue began to settle in, she sensed the excitement re-emerging. Tomorrow, she would set her plan into motion. This would involve stepping beyond her fear of their judgment and boldly inviting them into a conversation about educational engagement, but the impenetrable barrier of resentment among her colleagues haunted her. Had she truly weighed the risks? Would her undertaken mission embrace an openness to dialogue, or would her attempts fail to reach those she most hoped to impact? The lines were drawn, but the battleground was her own mind, littered with doubts and the uncertainty of facing those who may not welcome her intentions as she had hoped. She understood that the workshop was a step toward empowerment, yet it was also a confrontation with her deepest fears. Would she find the strength to navigate this landscape of emotions? The next dawn would unveil answers, but tonight, uncertainty loomed larger than ever. As she drifted to sleep, the question throbbed insistently within her: could genuine change emerge from vulnerability, or would it crumble beneath the weight of skepticism? The next morning, Clara woke to an ominous sky, uneasily mirroring her internal turmoil. She lingered in bed for too long, gathering her thoughts around the day's objectives. The challenge ahead loomed large, but so did the prospect of transformative dialogue. As she dressed, her mind raced, weighing every possible reaction to her workshop proposal, and for a moment, it felt as if the fabric of her reality was unraveling at the seams. Upon arriving at the faculty meeting, Clara could sense the tension among her colleagues. Hushed voices filled the room, cutting through the typical pre-meeting pleasantries, evolving into nervous laughter, an all too familiar shield they raised against vulnerability. She took a deep breath, cupping her hands nervously around her coffee cup, seeking warmth in it, a minor comfort amidst the wind chill threading through her courage. When the moment arrived to present her workshop, Clara found herself standing at the intersection of fear and ambition. The initial feedback was cautious, laced with skepticism. Some faculty members leaned back in their chairs, arms crossed, while others barely concealed their eye rolls. The room echoed with silence that dripped with doubt. It was then that she realized she had merely offered a plan instead of a commitment. Clara needed to anchor her ideas in more than just good intentions. She had to deliver a persuasive narrative. As she addressed the faculty, her voice steadied with clarity that surprised even her. "This isn't just about me and my methods," she stated, looking into the eyes of the skeptics. "This is about our experiences, collectively shaping the educational landscape through shared narratives and brave conversations." She took a calculated risk by sharing her own apprehensions, feelings of inadequacy, the weight of responsibility, and the fear of uncharted waters. In that moment of unguarded honesty, Clara felt a shift. The tightness in the room began to ease, if only slightly. It was a moment where personal vulnerability grounded her professional challenge, revealing the heart of her workshop. Then, something unexpected happened. Luca, leaning into his habitual gruffness, spoke up. "You know, Clara," he said, his voice grumbling like the distant rumble of thunder, "I've been at this long enough to see what happens when people share their stories. It's messy. But maybe that's what we need, a little messiness in our perfect plans." Clara's heart raced, emboldened by the shift in sentiment. Was this the breakthrough she had sought? Emma followed, adding her own experiences, drawing on her moments of impact that were buried beneath her easily shared laughter. The tentative encouragement ignited a cascading response. Others began to share their reservations, revealing not only their doubts but also their aspirations. Yet, as the discussion surged, Clara couldn't escape the realization of a deeper conflict brewing. The passion unfolding was compromised by the remnants of reluctance, the hesitation to fully engage in the messiness Luca had mentioned. Fear was still sprawled across their faces, shimmering just beneath the surface like water ready to overflow. After the meeting concluded, Clara felt exhausted yet exhilarated, her pulse quickening with the exhilarating promise of potential collaboration. However, lurking in her thoughts was a question that grounded her back to reality. Had she truly inspired a culture of openness, or had she merely skimmed the surface? As she walked away from the meeting, the path ahead remained daunting. Her next steps needed intention if she wished to guide this momentum toward tangible outcomes. Was she prepared to not just initiate a conversation but to see it through, navigating the eventual turbulence that might come when fears collide with aspirations? The stakes were rising, and Clara understood that the coming days would reveal the resilience of her convictions. Would she rise to the occasion? Behind every doubt lingered the potential for newfound insights only achievable through discomfort. And as she reflected, walking into the day's light, a realization crystallized: the true measure of success wouldn't be the applause at the end, but the meaningful conversations that unfolded along the way, testing her resolve. The question loomed large in her mind: how could she ensure that the dialogue began within her workshop and extended beyond its walls, forging lasting relationships and change? The workshop was only the beginning. The true test of vulnerability would soon challenge the very foundation of her intentions. Clara emerged from that whirlwind of challenge and self-discovery transformed, propelled by a newfound sense of purpose that left no room for the fear that had previously shackled her. The faculty's hesitance had transformed into a collaborative spirit, setting the stage for her to not just advocate for engagement but to model the very principles she had designed to inspire. Weeks passed, and the impact of her workshop rippled through the faculty like the electric charge of a storm. Teachers who had once been skeptical began expressing interest in incorporating elements of her methodologies into their own practices. Clara felt a swell of confidence as she witnessed her colleagues embracing the idea of engaging emotionally with history, recognizing the power in reflective learning. They were stepping into uncharted waters just as she had. The pivotal moment came when she was invited to present at a district-wide conference, a platform she had dreamt of but had never envisioned for herself. Clara stood at the podium, her heartbeat echoing in her ears, but this time, ready for anything. With a room full of educators, she wove a narrative around her journey, emphasizing the need for empathy and connection in education. The stories of her students, their struggles and revelations, punctuated her presentation, breathing life into her arguments. As she concluded her talk, the audience erupted into applause. She had not only articulated a vision but had also challenged them to step outside the confines of traditional teaching methods, to consider their roles as not just educators, but as catalysts for emotional growth. Clara felt an undeniable shift. She wasn't an underappreciated teacher any longer, she was recognized as a leader, firmly rooted in her convictions. The transformation within her also found validation externally. After the conference, several district leaders approached her, expressing interest in the potential of her program as a model for future curricular changes. They recognized her as a voice deserving of their attention and respect, offering her opportunities to collaborate on developing workshops that could empower teachers across the district, and then came the tangible recognition her methodologies were proposed to be integrated into the curriculum redesign process. Clara couldn't believe how far she'd come from those early days filled with self-doubt, once restrained by fear of inadequacy. No longer did she merely want her students to memorize dates and events, she wanted to cultivate a passion for history that would echo through their lives. Clara had found not just her voice but her place within the fabric of education. She embraced mentorship opportunities, guiding newer teachers through their insecurities, drawing from the very experiences that once haunted her. Every so often, as she wandered through the halls, she would see Lucy or other students she had inspired, their enthusiasm igniting each curve in her path, a living testament to the impact of her transformation. With her identity secure, Clara wrote her vision statement, crafting it into a manifesto for her teaching philosophy that argued for the blend of emotional connection and educational rigor. This would serve as her foundation in any future discussions. She stood on solid ground, not just for herself but for her students and colleagues. Clara's classroom was no longer an isolated chamber of learning, it had become a nexus for students to share their own histories, experiences, and aspirations, echoing the very essence of her journey. The fullness of her change was celebrated at the end-of-year faculty gathering when she received a Distinguished Recognition Award for innovative teaching. It encapsulated not only her journey of personal growth but the communal shift she had fostered within her school. As she stepped forward to accept her award, Clara felt the weight of recognition, not just as a teacher, but as a testament to resilience and authenticity. Ultimately, Clara had conquered her challenges, demonstrating that true education rests on the pillars of emotional connection and the courage to innovate. Stepping off the stage, she understood that the real achievement lay in inspiring others to see potential in discomfort, to embrace their vulnerabilities. In that moment of fulfillment, Clara recognized her evolution from the timid teacher longing for acknowledgement to a bold advocate for an education that champions connection and engagement. And just as the past narratives of heroes and conflicts had inspired her, she now inspired others to embrace their journeys of growth, proving that transformation is indeed possible when one dares to break free from the confines of the expected. This is your moment to embrace transformation. Subscribe immediately to ensure you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will undoubtedly resonate with you. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support for these powerful narratives. Comment below with your reactions and theories about Clara's journey and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.